Oh, good morning to you. Good morning, world. Welcome to episode 2 of Top of the Morning, presented by TopRopeReport.com. I am your host, Eric Ames, better known to most of my friends as EA. You can call me whatever you want, just keep it civil. So, this Sunday, we have the first Raw brand exclusive pay-per-view, Clash of Champions, coming up. And in this episode, I spoke with TopRopeReport.com columnist and results specialist, Mr. Joshua Searles. This was Josh's first foray into the world of podcasting. I think that Josh did a very good job. He's a great guy, very knowledgeable about the product, so he knows his ish, I guess you could say. So, yeah, we first talk about Josh's introduction to the world of wrestling as a young kid. He's around the same age as me, so we grew up in the same kind of era getting into the product. We also discuss our fantasy football league a little bit for all you fantasy football players out there. Mr. Searles is off to a little bit of a rough start at this point in the season. He's sitting at 0-2, still early. I'm at 1-1. So yeah, here is our Clash of Champions prediction show, previewing every match on the card, giving you our picks, talking a little bit about the participants in each match and how we feel about them leading into the event and their road following. So here is episode numero dos, the Clash of Champions preview with Joshua Searles. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by TopRopeReport.com's Joshua Searles. Josh, thanks for breaking the proverbial podcast ice and taking some time for me tonight.
Oh, absolutely, Eric. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I know we're both Patriots fans, and this is, even though this won't be heard until Saturday, this is Thursday evening when we're recording this, so we're both definitely looking forward to the Patriots game as long as Mr. Jacoby Brissett can do something for us.
I'm not worried about Jacoby at all. In Bill Belichick, we trust. Just a chance for him to prove how great he is.
This is true. I can't really disagree there. So, before we get into our Clash of Champions preview and predictions, why don't you... Well, obviously I know a lot about you. Josh and I first met at an old place of employment of mine, and pretty much instantly hit it off as soon as we found out the other one was a wrestling fan, and it kind of grew from there. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how you first started getting into watching wrestling and your contributions to TopRopeReport.com?
Well, to start off, I'm 34. So, like a lot of kids back then, I was able to see it on Saturday morning television. Was my first introduction to wrestling. And eventually, after begging my parents, my dad surprised me with tickets to a live event that they were having in Portland, Maine, at the old Cumberland County Civic Center. And I can remember the main event being Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior, and I was hooked. I mean, from that point on, it was just every Saturday morning I could find it. I was psyched.
Yeah, a lot of the similar story for me. I want to say I was at that same show, but for me it was...
Well, it's very possible.
Yeah, I think I was. There wasn't too many old Civic Center shows that I missed back in the day.
No, and that's just it. And people tried to get to them as they came around, because up here, where it's not a huge venue, it's seldom that we actually got shows to come. So when they came, you really wanted to go.
Exactly, especially nowadays where it's such a bigger production and our hometown arena is very small, so we're lucky if we get them once a year at this point.
Oh, definitely. But I remember the last show that we went to, Eric, I saw you and your nephew, because I had my nephew as well there, and the kids absolutely loved it.
Yes, that was my nephew. He's turning... Oh God, my brother's gonna kill me. He's turning 7 here pretty soon, but that was his first show, and he had never really been exposed to wrestling before, and he was just... I don't know if he still watches or not, but he was glued, and I believe it was the Lucha Dragons was what he was mainly into, which of course, that gimmick was made for kids.
Absolutely. Well, Lucha Dragons was a good gimmick for kids, absolutely, but I don't like that they split them up, but that's a topic for another time. I could go off on that, but
Right.
I know my nephew Connor's 8 years old, and his favorite was Lucha Dragons as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I thought that it would have been better off to keep them together. But like you said, that's a topic for another day. So tell me a little bit about what your contributions to TopRopeReport.com are.
So for TRR, I cover every Friday afternoon. I cover Superstars for Top Rope, play-by-play action. I like doing Superstars because it gives me a chance to see the guys that I don't see on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, it definitely gives you an opportunity to see some of the guys that don't get used as often. And as a little sidebar to the results, I still firmly believe that we have the most detailed results out of any place on the web. And Josh can tell you, the way that we do it is definitely not something that everybody can do. It's definitely an acquired skill.
Oh, absolutely. It definitely took me multiple weeks to learn the style and really become comfortable with doing it. And now it's just second nature. We go play by play. I mean, every hold, every move, descriptions. If you're an in-depth wrestling fan, you really ought to be reading this.
Right, and the great part about it is the way that we do it, it kind of gives you the option, because if you don't want to sit there and read hold by hold and the play by play, you can just follow the bold lettering and see, okay, what was match number 1, for example? Oh, it was Rusev versus Swagger. Who won? We give you all the details. You can see who won, how they won, what move they used. But we really like to put a focus on the play by play, because a lot of times people forget that what happens in between that 20 by 20 ring is a story in itself. And when some of these other sites are only giving you a couple of sentences describing what happened, it's not really giving justice to the story of the match.
And you know what else I think separates us, Eric? The fact that we are true wrestling fans. A lot of these other sites, I don't think are true wrestling fans. They cover it for the spectacle, they cover it for the money, but I'm not sure they were born and bred into it like we were.
I would agree with that. I think a lot of the other sites, they don't do near as much homework as they should. They make a lot of mistakes. Not that we don't make mistakes, but...
Everybody does.
Right. If I had to put a number on it, I would say 1 mistake out of 1,000. That's a pretty good batting average.
Right? Well, and believe me, I comb my articles over just to make sure those mistakes don't happen. But also, other than Superstars, I also write an article called Mixed Tap Mayhem with my girlfriend, Christina Marston. And what we do every 2 weeks is we'll go back and forth arguing, sometimes agreeing on different topics, and we alternate, and we'll each pick a topic, and away we go. Yes. And it's really interesting to see the different takes from a male and female perspective.
Yes, it is. That's one of our more popular columns. It's, like you said, it's really interesting. A lot of columns are mainly just one person, which almost every column on TRR is. But when you have that dynamic of 2 people and you guys are basically having a back and forth conversation, it often makes me wonder if things are getting a little heated in the Searles household.
Oh, believe me, they do. And you know what? On a sidebar, Eric, as far as wrestling goes, it's what actually drew me to Christina. I mean, we're together because I saw wrestling on her Facebook page one day, and that's how we ended up hitting it off.
And what else can you really ask for, you know? It's like three
Well,
things that a guy looks for. Good food, sports, and beer.
Exactly. And you know what? I have all three, and I cannot complain at all.
Well, speaking of sports, before we also get into our Clash of Champions preview, some of you probably don't know this, but we talked about the Patriots game a little bit, and Joshua and I are actually members of a 12-team standard scoring fantasy football league, as it seems like almost everybody in the country plays fantasy football at this point. So we're heading into week 3 right now, and I gotta ask, Josh, 0-2, what's going on with your squad, brother?
Well, Mr. Rashad Jennings has not shown up like I would have liked. Starting running back for the New York Giants, I was hoping more than single-digit points out of each game, but what can you do?
This is true.
Blake Bortles, I was really...
Yeah, why don't you run down your lineup for us real quick?
Well, I have Blake Bortles, Ezekiel Elliott, LaShawn McCoy, Alshon Jeffrey, Randall Cobb, Greg Olson, the Houston Texans defense, and Stephen Hoshka.
See, pre-draft, if someone or post-draft, before the season started, looking at that, I think a lot of people would have said, "Holy crap, the rest of the people in your league must suck."
And I had a great draft, Eric. I was psyched with my team, and they just haven't shown up. But I've been doing this long enough. It's very early in the season. I've made a few adjustments for tonight. As I've pumped up Bill Belichick, I'm playing 2 different members against him, the Texans D and Will Fuller off my bench.
I can't argue with Will Fuller. He's been pretty spot on for a rookie so far. I think that's probably a good play this week.
Well, fortunately, I watch the Patriots every weekend, and their cornerbacks can't keep up with them. So I'm going to roll the dice.
Yep. Plus all the extra attention on DeAndre Hopkins. So I think the Patriots are going to be looking to probably grind the clock a little bit tonight. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, absolutely. Do you have anybody going tonight?
I do. Actually, here's my lineup. We got Aaron Rodgers at the quarterback. Playing tonight, I have Lamar Miller. I just made a trade yesterday or the day before where I was able to acquire Jamal Charles, who was not quite at 100%. A little bit of a risky move for the time being, because I gave up Frank Gore in the process, who I think is poised to have a big week this week against San Diego. But after that, I've got Allen Robinson at the wide receiver, coupled with Demaryius Thomas. And then for now, I have a bit of a surprise at the tight end so far this year with Jacob Tamme from the Atlanta Falcons. I've also got Tyler Eifert on my bench, who has just started practicing this week. So he hasn't been ruled out for this weekend. I don't think I'd roll with him anyway. So it's looking like he's going to be back here pretty soon. So Tammy's been a solid fill-in, even though I didn't have him last
You didn't
week.
draft him, did you?
I did not. No, I drafted Jared Cook, and I had a total dud of a week 1. So I kind of panicked a little bit. And then last week, I had 4 different tight ends in my starting lineup. I had Cook, and I dropped him, and picked up Tamme. And Demaryius Thomas was going into that game hobbled, so it was looking like he wasn't going to be a full go. So I had picked up Virgil Green from Denver, tight end, thinking he might get more targets. And then at the I want to say, like a couple of hours before game time, I saw that Gronk was out. So I made a last-minute switch and threw Martellus Bennett in there, which worked out beautifully for me this week. But yeah, after that, I've got Arizona defense. I've been rolling with Mike Wallace at the flex, who's been pretty hot. And then my kicker is Chris Boswell from Pittsburgh. I'm sitting at 1-1, so I think I'm in okay shape. I definitely need to get Jamal Charles back healthy sooner rather than later. But I think I'm doing I think I'm doing okay right now after that little bit of a panic in week 1.
Now, it sounds like you're in good shape. We're going to have to talk about Allen Robinson, though, because that's somebody I've been looking at.
All right. We might be able to talk a little.
And, you know, I have a good bench. I've got a decent bench. I've got Sterling Shepard. I've got Jerick McKinnon. Everybody wants Jerick McKinnon nowadays.
This is true, yeah. So I've been looking at other people's teams, and I've been trying to find a way that I could get my hands on an elite receiver, because Robinson and Demarius haven't quite shown up yet, but we'll see what happens. I might have to stand pat for a week or two and then go all Trader Danny on them.
Well, like we said, it's only week 2, and it's a little too early to panic about anything.
This is true. It's still very early, and crazy things happen in our league, so... Alright, we'll move away from fantasy football and get into what we really got together to talk about, with Clash of Champions happening this Sunday, the first pay-per-view that is exclusive to the Raw brand. So Josh and I are gonna talk a little bit about the upcoming card, even though at this point it may or may not be finalized. There's been some rumors of Enzo and Cass versus the Shining Stars possibly being added. For the time being, we're going to skip over that because as of, like I said, this comes out on Saturday, but right now it's Thursday, and that hasn't been confirmed yet. So we're going to act like it's not happening. So, we'll get into things, starting off with the kickoff show, the first legitimate matchup for Nia Jax as she takes on Alicia Fox. So, Josh, tell me, what are your thoughts on Nia Jax so far? She hasn't really had any legit competition and has only been in enhancement matches on Raw. What do you think of her character and how she's been booked?
Well, as far as the character goes, I really didn't care for Nia at first. I thought she was sloppy in the ring. She moved very slowly. And she was just your basic mute giant. However, recently, the squash matches themselves started out very bland, and I didn't understand what they were doing with them. But now I see, or I came to realize, I should say, that they had to build her up and show that, what am I trying to say here? That she is a dominant force. That she can just throw these girls around, and to present Alicia as somebody who's established, a former, well, I'll say Divas champion, because it was at the time, it presents her with her first real challenge, as opposed in opposition to these squash matches.
Yep, I would agree with that.
It gives a relative comparison. So, at first I was very torn on Nia. I didn't care for her much, but I like the way she's been booked. I think it was a great way to do it.
I think, to what you said earlier about, growing up and watching on Saturday mornings, I think for fans similar to our ages, or you're a little bit older than me, not too much, but growing up watching those matches on Saturday mornings, squash matches to me are not really that big of a deal. It was the norm back then. I think a lot of the fans that started getting into wrestling during the Monday Night Wars, where the tables were kind of turned and everybody was going for ratings and it was all superstar versus superstar matches, they were a little bit spoiled. So I think when fans of that age are starting to see these squash matches, they're having a hard time getting invested. But I definitely would agree that the enhancement matches are to build up a character and introduce a character. And especially now where the brands have been split, you don't want to take your lower card guys, such as, for example, like a Jack Swagger or a Curtis Axel or a Bo Dallas or somebody along those lines, and feed them to someone just to put someone else over. Because when the time comes, if you end up needing that person and you've buried them so far, it's going to take you so much longer to dig them out of that hole to make them a legitimate contender again.
Cite Bray Wyatt in that case.
Right. Or well, like Bo Dallas, they kind of took him as a joke for a long time. Now it looks like they're starting to give him something to do. He's been having his own enhancement matches. but it's going to take time with him because they just kept burying him and he was losing all the time. So I think it's definitely smart of them to utilize the jobbers, I guess you could say, to build up these characters like Nia and like Braun Strowman, for example.
Well, and Braun is a perfect example. He actually really helped me turn to Nia, because I loved what they were doing with Braun, and I had to look at myself and be like, well, what are you thinking? They're doing the exact same thing with Nia. You love it with Braun, but you don't love it with Nia?
Right, right.
And it really opened my eyes.
Yeah, the thing with Nia for me is I know I've had this conversation with you and with Christina before about her and her character, and yeah, she was a little bland at first, but the thing with her is she's so different from all of the other girls. That's what really sets her apart, she's like, I don't know if you remember because she was only in the WWE for a cup of coffee, but to me she's like Karma or Awesome Kong, at a time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, they were doing...
That would be the best comparison.
Yeah, they were doing the vignettes where she was tearing the heads off the Barbie dolls. To me, that's kind of who Nia Jax is. I think that's what makes her stand out, is that, if she's doing hammer locks and side headlocks and arm drags, it just wouldn't be the same because of her size.
Well, I think Nia could use some more in-ring character work, pander to the audience a little more, do a little bit more than just the actual physical work in the ring, and try to tell the story to the audience. And I think that's the part I have trouble with her at the moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I definitely can see where you're coming from. A lot of the kind of subtle looks she gives, I kind of dig that. She's definitely not... I wouldn't call her strong on promos or anything like that, but definitely some more character development will need to be done with her eventually. So, as it comes to Alicia versus Nia Jax, what's your prediction? How do you see this one going?
Nia. And I don't see it being a squash, but I don't see it being a long match either. Alicia will put up a small fight, but in the end, Nia's going to plant her.
Yep, I'm going to have to agree with you on that one. I don't see any way that Alicia wins this. The only thing that I could see possibly happening is where Alicia has that crazy psychotic character. Maybe she loses her cool and it ends up getting herself disqualified or something like that. But other than that, I got to go Nia Jax all the way.
Definitely. You don't see any outside interference or anything in this match?
I don't. Nothing that would really make any sense. Like I said, like you said, I don't see it being a squash. I could see it going maybe 10 minutes at the most. She's definitely capable.
No, I think you're being generous there, personally.
Yeah, I think that's probably generous. She's certainly capable of having matches that are that long, as we've seen with some of her matches with Asuka and NXT and Bayley. But yeah, I think 10 minutes is probably a bit of a reach, and like I said, probably generous. And where that's being shorter, maybe that's where we see Enzo and Cass against the Shining Stars possibly get plugged in on the kickoff show.
Yeah, that's just what I was thinking. If anywhere, that's where they would plug it in.
Okay, moving on. Next on the card, I have put... Obviously, we don't know the order that these are going to happen, but I've got the Best of 7 series match number 7 between Sheamus and Cesaro. So, obviously, this series started out with Sheamus going up 3-0. Cesaro has now come back with 3 straight wins to tie the series up. What are your thoughts on the whole Best of 7 series between these two?
Are we looking at a Yankees-Red Sox 0-4 scenario here? That's what I'm thinking.
Yes, I would say so, probably.
For our listeners that don't know, the Boston Red Sox were down 3-0 to the New York Yankees in the 0-4 playoffs, and they came back and won 4 straight games to go to the World Series.
And if you don't know, now you know.
I'm torn on this match, Eric. I really am. For numerous reasons. Cesaro hasn't won a championship yet, outside the tag team titles here in the WWE. He obviously has the physical ability. He has the promo work. He he has the whole package, and I don't know why they haven't given him the opportunity yet.
Yeah, he's one of those curious cases where I feel like he's hit that glass ceiling, and he might not ever break through it. This whole best of 7, to me, I've not really been a big fan of. It's not like... They've been hard-hitting matches, and these guys can put on a good match, but how different has each match really been? You know, that these guys, they don't really strike me as the kind of guys that can put on a best of 7 series and have every match be marketably different than the last. And if you remember, this started out with them having 2 matches prior to this. So really, it's been a best of 9 series with them having 9 matches with each other in a row. But for me, it hasn't really been... You know, we saw a best of 7 between Booker T and Chris Benoit in WCW that was phenomenal. And then they tried to go back to it in WWE. It still was, it was okay. I believe Booker got hurt near the end of that. But then after that, we also had a best of 7, I believe it was a best of 7, between Matt Hardy and MVP at one point, which neither of those guys are overly technical in the ring. However, the promos for that were beyond entertaining. So, to me, this whole thing was kind of put together just because I don't think they really know what else to do with them.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Eric. They have no idea what they're doing with these 2 stars. They know their main event caliber, but they have no idea where to plug them in. And that brings me up another point. What title is this for? Do we even know yet?
We don't. You're absolutely right. They have not said. They just said a championship opportunity. So it could be a U.S. title shot. It could be a Universal title shot. If we knew that, I think that it would make predicting it a lot easier. Because if it was for the Universal title, then I would go Cesaro hands down. Just because we haven't gotten to that match yet, but I don't see Owens kicking the bucket on his title reign anytime soon. So you certainly wouldn't have a heel versus heel match for that. If it's for the U.S. title, I kind of am leaning towards Roman, so I wouldn't be surprised if Sheamus wins it for the very same reason. But the biggest issue with these guys, to me, is I think at least one or both of them should have been drafted to SmackDown.
Cesaro, in my opinion. Bringing up Sheamus, I've seen him win so much at this point. He's such good friends with Triple H outside of what you see on screen, and I feel as though that gives him a leg up.
It definitely did in the beginning. You're absolutely right. That was a big part of the reason why he got such a monster push when he was introduced on ECW and then subsequently drafted to Raw and defeated John Cena for the WWE title, basically out of nowhere. So that definitely played a part. I don't care what anybody else says. So alright, gun to your head, who are you picking?
I'm going to say Cesaro.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't see why they would have him come all the way back only for him to lose. And I'm starting to think, I'm starting to lean towards this is possibly for a Universal Championship shot.
I don't see them putting on the spectacle that they have of making a big deal out of a best of 7 series to go after a mid-grade title like the U.S. title. And I do kind of feel bad saying that about the U.S. title, but it is what it is.
Nope, I would definitely agree with you. I think they're still in the process of building that up. But, yeah, I think the whole spectacle of the best of 7, it has to lead to a Universal title match. If not, it kind of negates the importance of the entire best of 7.
But you know what? That being said, Eric, it would not surprise me in the least to see this great comeback that Cesaro has had just squashed and Sheamus walk out of there the winner.
Yeah, I'm definitely more on the fence about this one than the majority of the matches. That's for sure.
Yeah, this is my biggest toss-up of the night, honestly.
So moving on, the next on the card that I have is the WWE Cruiserweight Championship. The brand new Cruiserweight Champion, TJ Perkins, taking on the veteran, the redemption story, Mr. The Brian Kendrick. I was a little surprised that we got the introduction to the brand new Cruiserweight division this past Monday on Raw. However, your Cruiserweight champion was not on the show at all. What are your thoughts on that?
That was very odd to me. And not only the Cruiserweight champion, but a lot of the guys that they had advertised weren't.
Right.
But you would figure if these 4 guys are going for his title, he'd want to be there firsthand to watch ringside. Maybe talk to the guys and introduce himself, get himself known by the WWE audience.
Right. That didn't make much sense to me. If you're going to have Foley come out and do the big introductions, you might as well have him introduce your brand new Cruiserweight champion instead of having his first main roster appearance be on pay-per-view. I thought that was really puzzling. He could have joined commentary or even sat at ringside for the match.
Well, and by doing this, having him be introduced at Clash of Champions, are they setting him up for failure, essentially, by putting him against an established superstar such as the Brian Kendrick, who was over for the majority of his career?
Yeah, I don't believe so. I don't feel like a title switch would happen this quickly. I think a big part of the reason why Kendrick emerged as the number 1 contender is because he is a name, and a lot of fans will remember him as opposed to the other guys that are seemingly just still being introduced. But the whole build-up to the first night of the Cruiserweight division was very odd because they showcased a number of guys in the weeks leading up to that who are not even officially part of the roster now, such as Jack Gallagher, Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, and I want to say there was another one who I'm drawing a blank on the name, but there was a 4th one that had been announced previously. Akira Tozawa.
And Zack Sabre Jr.?
It was Akira Tozawa.
Tozawa, yes.
Yeah. The whole lead-up to that night was very, very strange. I do think that we will see those guys at some point, but it's almost like they weren't 100% sure on who they wanted to start the division with until last weekend when they finally announced everybody, which a good friend of TopRopeReport.com, Lindsay Dorado, was not even ever mentioned, which is another very, very strange thing. The whole thing was very weird leading up to that.
I was very bummed that Lindsay wasn't there. Christina was, Lindsay's going to come out, he's going to come out. And then nothing.
Yeah, it didn't happen. He did. I do not have Hulu, so I am never able to catch it. But he did have a match on Main Event this week against Rich Swann. So he did get to make his debut, but obviously not on Raw, and that's a show that a lot of people don't really watch.
Well, that's definitely strange.
Yeah, very strange, especially since that would have been traveling with the SmackDown crew. There's been a couple of times they've had a Raw match on Main Event, though. I'm not quite sure what they're doing there. So
I just realized I misspoke earlier when I said Raw.
Oh, well, it happens. Minor mistake. So, prediction for the Cruiserweight Championship, I am going to go TJ Perkins retains.
I'm going to have to agree with you for the same exact reasons you stated earlier. I don't see them dropping the title immediately, especially to an established guy like Kendrick. I don't want to call him an enhancement talent, but in this particular match, that's what he's going to be doing.
Right, he's the elder statesman, so to speak, so I definitely don't... I mean, if at most maybe he gets a congratulatory run with that title at some point before he's finished, but I don't see it happening now.
Eric, let's be perfectly honest with each other. He deserves a title run after having to train Eva Marie.
This is true. I'm not as down on her, or I guess as I'm more open to see what she can bring to the table. I'm not ready to, whether or not I like her as a person, that's a different story. Whether I think she's in the business for the right reasons is a different story. However, I'm still gonna hold out my judgment on her until I can see how much she's improved in the ring. We'll see how good of a trainer Kendrick really is.
Hey, well, the suspension's up. You never know. We might see her tonight.
This is true, yeah. We didn't see her
from Concord, California.
We didn't see her on SmackDown, so. All right, next on the card, I have the Gift of Jericho. Chris Jericho versus the underdog from the underground, Sami Zayn. So at this point, I still feel like now that he's gotten away from Kevin Owens, they're not really sure what to do with Sami Zayn. So I think this was kind of thrown together as a way to get both of these guys on the card. It's turned out well, obviously, with the highlight reel segment, and of course Jericho smashes Sami in the head with the phone. So Jericho can take goose crap and turn it into gold. So I think that it's a smart way to get them both on the card if that's what happened. And I think that they have a lot of potential to be the match of the evening. But overall, I still feel like they don't really know what to do with Sami at this point.
In my notes, I have here Sami versus Jericho, the winner, and underneath, why is this feud happening? ?
Yeah, it does. It seems very thrown together, and not. I know that they've been playing off of Jericho's friendship with Owens and Sami's friendship with Kevin Owens falling apart, which is, I guess...
Well, and that's where they're rooted. That's where they had to root it in, because there's no other way to put these superstars together. I mean, maybe the Canada thing, but other than that...
Right, unless you're going to make it like a #1 contenders match, but that was pretty much the only way that they could go with it to tie it all together. I think where we have these double pay-per-views every month, sometimes we're going to see a lot of matches kind of thrown together like this with not as much time in between events as there used to be.
It seems so sporadic. It really. I mean, and like you said, Jericho could, sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in a wedding dress. He's great. I mean, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer and in my top 3 wrestlers of all time.
That is not where I thought you were going with that analogy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm glad we got PG, though.
And I do think this is going to be the match of the night, personally, with the talent level of these two guys, and where we haven't really seen them in the ring that much together. I think there's still a lot they have to show.
Yep, I definitely, I'm not going to say 100% that this will be the match of the night, but it absolutely has the capability to be. As far as prediction, I'm going to go with Chris Jericho, and here's why. So before Finn Balor got hurt, the rumor was that at Hell in a Cell, we were going to be, which you're attending, by the way, at the TD Garden in Boston. The rumor was that the main event for that was going to be Balor versus Owens versus Jericho for the Universal title. So I think that they're going to stick with that, obviously without Balor, and have Rollins take that place, take the spot that Balor would have had, but not as the champion. So still with Owens as the champion. So with that being said, I'm picking Y2J.
Wow. On the fly, I want to change to Y2J just because you gave such a good reason right there. I'm going to stick with Sami because it's what I've written down. But yeah, that's very likely. Thinking about it, how long will Jericho essentially play second fiddle to Kevin Owens? He's not that kind of guy. He's not that kind of superstar.
Right.
He's an alpha dog, and he will want to prove it one way or the other.
Right, especially the heel gimmick that he's been portraying has been very egotistical. If you think back to when he turned on AJ Styles, it was all about his ego. So I do think that at some point that might come into play. I don't believe that Jericho would go full-fledged babyface before he eventually does walk away this year, which I am predicting he will, because I know at some point next year, I believe he's set to record another album with Fozzy, so...
I can't wait.
Okay, so next up, we are going to go to the tag team division for the Raw Tag Team Championships. The New Day, we don't know which two members, I would assume Kofi and Big E, being challenged yet again by Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. So I would preface this conversation with this question. Have you had enough of this feud, or is it just me?
I've had enough of Gallows and Anderson as they're currently packaged, which I think is making me have enough of this feud.
It's been so long that it seems like they've been feuding, and for the last couple of pay-per-views, I keep thinking, this is the time for New Day to drop the titles. This is going to be the time, and it's still not happening. I'm not really sure why this has dragged on so much. Possibly because...
And it makes you question, do they have faith in the other teams in the division? And if they don't, why? Because it's arguably their best division right now.
I'd have to say no. I don't think they do. In my opinion, Raw's tag team division is weak. I think SmackDown's tag team division is far superior to Raw's. Because once you get past... You've got New Day and you've got Gallows and Anderson. Then you got Enzo and Cass. But once you get past those guys... Who do you got?
Good point.
you really don't. You've got the Shining Stars, who I know a lot of people are down on them. I'm a bit of a closet fan of theirs, just because they've been always saddled with poor gimmicks. And
but they're doing a lot better with this one than they were with the Los Matadores.
Yes, it really hurts their perception to the fans, because if you just watch them in the ring, they're as talented as anybody on the roster in terms of between the ropes.
Absolutely.
But then, after Enzo and Cass, you got the Shining Stars, who they're still trying to build up. You lost the Dudleys, so you're left with who? Golden Truth, and then what?
And this brings me back to my complaint earlier about them splitting up the Lucha Dragons, because they would have been a great addition to this division.
Yep, I would agree with that too. I also think, because he was such a nice guy, and I've still been talking to him a little bit here and there, that if you are going to bring back the Headbangers, Raw's the place for them. They can slide right into that spot that the Dudley Boys had, and help to build some of these other teams. But at some point, Raw's got to do something here, because they are really hurting on that side.
Well, and I remember after reading your interview that you had with Thrasher, I know they're definitely open to that idea in whatever capacity it may be. And I think they could take that Dudley Boy spot as the enhancement elder statesman talent in the division.
Yeah, absolutely. And they looked great on SmackDown Live. They didn't look like they had missed a beat, so...
It was like it was 1999 again.
Yeah, I saw a lot of complaints on social media about them coming back. Completely unjustified to me. As far as the New Day Gallows and Anderson match goes, I've had enough of it. I think it's gone on this far mainly because once New Day drops the titles, if Gallows and Anderson aren't feuding with them, it's Enzo and Cass, and then that's it. So I think that's why it's dragged on this far. There have been a couple of good segments, but a couple of the segments have completely fallen flat to me. Like the Old Day, that was just horrible, a total reach. I do find Gallows and Anderson to be very entertaining, though. When they were doing the Doctors, Gallows and Anderson, I thought it was hilarious, where all the testicle references. So with that being said, for, I want to say, the third pay-per-view in a row now, my pick to finally win the tag team titles is Gallows and Anderson. Which way are you going on this one?
I'm going to go with Gallows and Anderson as well, and I've got written, it's time.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. It's time. If they don't turn up victorious here, I don't really know where you go with those guys. So I think it's definitely time. New Day's had a hell of a run. One of the, arguably the best tag team title run of at least the last 15 years, I'd say.
And if you bury them again to the New Day, it goes back to your point of how many times can you give somebody a loss and still have them be a credible competition.
Yep, exactly. That's why I thought that the last one, when Big E had run the injury storyline, I thought that was going to be Gallows and Anderson's time. Having Xavier come in as almost the designated jobber of the New Day, even though he's not really a jobber. Well, the majority of the time when he's in there over a Big E or Kofi Kingston is when they lose. So that's kind of why I thought that last time, I believe, was that must have been SummerSlam. I thought that was the time.
If somebody's going to take the pinfall, typically it's going to be Xavier Woods.
Yep. To me, that was the time to do it, so I'm gonna also say that now's the time to do it.
Before we move on from this, can I say how disgusted I am that they aren't the genuine ass kickers that they were in New Japan Pro Wrestling? Yeah. It doesn't seem like they have the edge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they've been kind of trying to character build them a little bit more lately, where they kind of were pegged as AJ Styles' sidekicks up until the draft. They've been doing a lot more of the skits, which, of course I said a couple of them fell flat. A couple of them I thought were great, because by all accounts and by all sources, Luke Gallows is extremely well-liked backstage, and most people would tell you he's the funniest guy in the locker room. So I think that they're trying to showcase more of that on screen. They just need to allow those guys to have more creative input into the skits, because it doesn't feel like it's organic every time.
No, it doesn't feel like they're letting them be themselves, and you can tell creative has a lot of input on that stuff. And I think one of my personal problems, Eric, is that I have to temper my expectations with these guys coming in from organizations such as New Japan, thinking they're going to be the exact same characters and the exact same person that I saw there.
Right.
Because it's a different environment, and it's a completely different style of wrestling.
Yep, absolutely. It definitely is. There's a lot more character-based stuff when it comes to, obviously, wrestling in the WWE. New Japan is not as big on that. It's more about the in-ring. I do think that we will see more of that aggressive side from them down the road once they get past this initial character-building phase. Alright, we're going to jump right along here. Next up on the card, or in my order at least, is for the United States Championship, pitting the champion, the Bulgarian Brute, Rusev, against the now, again, number one contender, Mr. Roman Reigns, in a match that we did not get on SummerSlam, even though it was scheduled. They ran an angle where Roman had attacked Rusev prior to the match and left him laying, therefore the match never took place. Obviously, Rusev returned from his, second honeymoon after his second wedding to Lana in Bulgaria. So he had taken some time off.
I would take as many weddings as I could get with Lana.
That's just as many more wedding nights, so why not?
Absolutely.
So, a lot of people are still really down on Roman. I'm still in the camp that I think he could do a lot for the United States title if he were to win it, which, spoiler alert, that is my prediction. But what do you think about Roman kind of dropping down the card and not being involved in the main title picture anymore?
I think it's the best move they could have made with him, because he's a prime example of what happens to a superstar who is great, has everything that you could ask for as a main event talent, but we don't want him as a main event talent yet. When you force him upon us, it makes us not hate him, because I don't want to use that terminology, but you really dislike that kind of character when they're forced upon you. It's not somebody that's genuine.
Right. The only issue that I have with Roman is his offense. I think he needs to vary that. I've been pretty vocal about that with his, I guess, excessive use of clotheslines, because he absolutely can put on a great match when the time calls for it. He's had some really good matches recently with Kevin Owens on Raw.
He's taking the John Cena route for the first 10 years of his career. Just going to use 5 moves.
Right. That's the other thing that I don't... I'm certainly not a big Roman Reigns fan, but I'm not as vehemently against him as most fans are. I think the biggest problem with him, if you remember back, he was one of the most popular guys in the company. And then heading into, I believe it was Royal Rumble 2015, when Daniel Bryan came back.
Oh, yes.
Everybody wanted, first Roman went out with injury for a couple of months. And it had been well known online that the company was planning on having Roman win the Rumble and go on to WrestleMania to face Brock. And then when it happened, everybody hated him immediately, because it wasn't Daniel Bryan. So hindsight being 2020, they made the right choice, because less than a month after WrestleMania, Bryan's career was over. So to me with Roman, it's more so the fact, I find that a lot of times fans like a guy, but then when they find out the company likes the guy, they don't like the guy anymore.
It definitely does seem to be that way. Roman has the personality of the wall I'm looking at right now. He's a one-dimensional superhero character that I have trouble getting behind. I don't dislike him. I don't really like him. I'm kind of lukewarm on Roman. I think he needs a little bit more mic work, a little bit more promo work, instead of just saying, I'm the guy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think a lot of the issue with Roman's promos is, it seems to me, like we said earlier, like it doesn't feel organic. Like sometimes he'll come out with something and I'm like, wow, that was a great line. Almost like, wow, he threw that in there on his own. So I think he has the ability to cut a good promo, but he's still kind of towing the line between going word for word off of something that, or off of a piece of paper that a writer hands to him, as opposed to taking the words on that paper and spinning them into his own thoughts and then verbalizing that.
Well, and that all takes time, too. Not everybody can be a Chris Jericho right off the bat and be brilliant. More often than not, they're going to be like Roman Reigns, and they're going to need to work on it.
Right, there's been plenty of guys that have not been great promos. Off the top of my head, Bret the Hitman Hart was not a great promo at all. Personally, I feel like Owen was the best wrestler in that whole family overall. Obviously Roman doesn't have the in-ring abilities near of what Bret Hart had, but I don't think he's any worse of a promo. So I think once he can find a way to verbalize what's on that sheet of paper that they give him and make it his own, is when he'll really start coming into his own. At this point, it's going to be very hard for him to get away from those boo birds, though, just because he's been stuck with it for so long now that some people just I don't think are ever going to accept him.
No, and they're trying to do little things to revamp his image. He's dropped the vest to move away from the Shield look. He needs to drop the music, in my opinion. What do you think about that?
I wouldn't be opposed to it. Possibly down the line, it's, to me, honestly, sometimes I even forget that was the Shield music at this point, just because, it's been used as his music for so long currently. But yeah, that would definitely make sense to me. That and varying his offense is really what he needs to do. I don't want to see him get stuck in that John Cena mode where it's, the 5 moves of doom, which kind of kills every babyface in the WWE, because they all do it. It's just Cena, is, I guess, the most prevalent at that, and not switching up his sequences in a match. So as long as he can do that, I think Roman will be just fine. People are going to...
Roman has everything he needs right in the palm of his hand. With his lineage, his God-given athletic ability, he really does have everything he wants right there. He just has to keep working, and that's why I'm not completely against him, because I do see it in him.
Right. Yep, I would agree with that. The other thing with him is, at this point where it's been John Cena for so long, and everybody complained for so long about we want someone new, and now we finally got someone new, and everyone's complaining about it again. At this point, I'm just like, at least it's not John Cena. It's been 10 plus years of that. I'm just happy it's someone else now.
Yeah, Cena gets old, and being up here in New England, every time you go to Boston, he doesn't get as warm a reception as you'd expect.
No, that's because you got D-bags like me in the crowd booing him in his hometown. All right.
But as far as guys like Cena and Reigns go, the super baby faces, we have to remember that this is still a PG company, and there's a lot of kids that watch, and that's who these characters are geared towards.
Yep, and that spot is something that's always going to be there. A lot of fans forget that, the show is not catered to them solely, and this is a publicly traded company that is worldwide, that tries to cater from anyone to, I guess, as young as 5 years old to as old as 85 years old. So that spot is always going to remain in the company. So,
and Christina has said it to me numerous times. Because of our age, we were able to watch the Attitude Era as teenagers. So we're jaded, essentially, when it comes to this day and age.
Yep, I would agree with that. We also grew up on Hogan, though, being the man for however long it was. So
yes, yes, that is definitely true.
So, prediction, Rusev versus Roman Reigns for the U.S. title. Who you got?
I've got Rusev.
Oh, going Rusev, okay.
Yep, I see Rusev going over. I don't see him dropping the title quite yet, and I just don't see the company having that much faith in Reigns at this point. Honestly, to put that.
This is another one that I'm really kind of on the fence about. Being forced to make a pick, I think I'm going to go with Roman, because that's kind of where I was thinking they were going to go back at SummerSlam. I like the idea of having a true main event talent holding your mid-card title, because I think that it makes that title feel so much more important. And I know that they've been trying to build Rusev as this unstoppable monster like he was initially, which I think they've failed at. So I could definitely see a switch happening here, and I think that it opens up a lot more options for United States title feuds, having Roman as the babyface champion. So I'm going to go with Roman on that one.
And as far as Roman goes in that aspect, I don't know where I was going with that. I think you need him. I don't know. Keep going. I'm sorry. I'll come back to that.
brain farts. They happen.
Yeah. I had something completely planned out to say, and then I was listening to you, and I forgot.
That's all right. It happens. So we're down to the final two. Obviously, we don't know. One of them will be the last match. This one, not so sure. So the first of the final two.
Hold on one sec.
Yeah, sure.
Can I stop you?
Yeah, go.
I remember what I was going to say. Say what we want about Cena, but when he held that U.S. title, it's the most important it's been in years.
Oh, absolutely. 100% agree. I think
so. As far as your point is that having a main event talent hold it, Roman has proved that he is a main event talent. So I can definitely see them sticking with him. But I'm going to stick with Rusev.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can move on now.
Roman's going to be a main eventer, whether people like it or not. Seems like more people don't like it, but I think at this point that's just how it's going to be. So moving on, another title match, the triple threat for the Raw Women's Championship. The champion Charlotte defends against Sasha Banks and Bayley, who was added to the mix this past Monday on Raw. This one is probably the match that I am most unsure about, because we just had the title change at SummerSlam, and of course word came out after that it was because Sasha was dealing with an injury, had to take a few weeks off. Luckily for us as fans and for Sasha, that it did not cost her as much time as they initially thought. But I think that the company was prepared to be without her for a much longer time frame, which is why you had Bayley thrown into the mix so quickly, because that was not planned. That was a bit of a panic move. Bayley was definitely meant to come up at some point this fall, but definitely not that quick, where you had Sasha go out with injury and you had Paige get suspended. The Raw women's division the landscape was very barren, so Bayley coming up was a bit of a necessity. Agreed or disagree?
Agreed, and Sasha's durability is why I don't see her winning tonight. You can't be having minor injuries and having to take the titles off somebody and switch it around, or else this title's going to lose its credibility very fast.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Going back to after WrestleMania, she was dealing with a concussion, and there was a lot of talk from sources that Vince McMahon thought that she was injury prone, even though that was her first I don't know if I'd call it a major injury, but that was her first legit injury. But she's definitely a smaller girl. She's got a small frame.
Well, that's just it. You look at the size of her frame, and it's just not accustomed to taking those kind of bumps and that amount of punishment. Typically, somebody of that size. I'm not saying that she is injury prone, but when you have a report such as Vince saying it, true or not, that's not good.
Some of the things that she does in the ring scare the bejesus out of me. If you go back to WrestleMania, the triple threat with Charlotte and Becky Lynch, she did a suicide dive where it was a regular suicide dive, but then she turned it into a somersault, and I thought for sure she was going to land on her head.
I know just the move you're talking about, because she tucked at the very last minute.
Yeah, same thing with her match, one of the best matches I've ever seen, women's or men's, against Bayley at NXT Brooklyn last year, when Bayley did the reverse Hurricane Rana off the top rope. That was another instance where I was like, dear Lord, this woman is going to break her neck, because Sasha just barely rotated enough where she didn't land on her head. So I don't know if maybe she'll scale back the risks. Probably not, because that's kind of what makes her her.
And you love to see that, though, because it shows that she's willing to put her body on the line, and for this title and for our entertainment. And you have to have nothing but respect for somebody like Sasha.
Right, you can absolutely see where the influence of being a big Eddie Guerrero fan comes out in her in-ring work, where she's not afraid to do any and everything out there in the ring, whether she's Charlotte's size or... I can't imagine that girl's more than 140 pounds. No way.
No, she's very small.
So as far as this one, I don't see Bayley taking it. I think it's too early for her. I could see her doing some other things first, possibly being the next opponent for Nia Jax, revisiting that from NXT. But yeah, I think it's too early for her. Sasha, I have to agree with you. I think the company might be afraid to pull the trigger on her again. So I'm gonna have to go with Charlotte.
Really? Well, somebody that we haven't talked about in this whole equation, and it's been brewing for weeks now, is Dana Brooke.
Dana Brooke, you're right. Yep, you're absolutely right.
I've got Bayley winning this match, Eric, via Dana turning on Charlotte.
Oh, okay. I could absolutely see that happening, and now that, of course, Dana was brought up originally and repaired with Emma from the NXT days, and Emma is now back up, and it looks like she's going to be joining the Raw roster. That's not confirmed. She actually posted on social media a few days ago that she's been cleared now for 6 weeks to return, but was just brought back on TV, or backstage, this past Monday. So, I could definitely see that happening, Josh. You might not be wrong there.
Well, and I think that's when Dana really started to come into her own in NXT, is when they paired up Emma with her. I think Emma helped her grow and helped her develop into the character she is now. I don't know about the Emma thing with rejoining Dana at this point. But if Dana doesn't turn on Charlotte during the match and cost her that way, I see Dana doing something else inadvertently to cost Charlotte the victory, and then the turn will happen afterwards.
Yep, I could see that. Here's my bold prediction for the eventual Dana turn on Charlotte. And I'm not going to call it a face turn, because I'm not entirely convinced that Dana would turn face if she does turn on Charlotte. I think that Charlotte is going to retain, though, and then you'll see Charlotte's next challenger being Paige, as a way to kind of reward her for the amount of troubles that there's been lately. I think that the company obviously wants to keep her around. She's not cleared to return yet that I am aware of from her injuries. She's obviously off suspension now. But I do think that she'll get a bit of, I guess you could call it the Titus O'Neil treatment. When Titus got suspended, he was immediately thrown into a title picture. So I could see the Dana turn on Charlotte helping Paige win the Raw Women's Championship.
Well, and you just answered my next question, Eric, because I have Paige ? Here, because I knew that it was getting close to the time that she'd be returning. I wasn't aware that she wasn't medically cleared yet, but I knew that she was backstage last week.
Yeah, her suspension ended on either the 18th or the 19th, and she was backstage at Raw, possibly getting checked out by the medical staff to see if she could return. But
and people think she's just not around because of the suspension. They fail to remember that she was hurt before the suspension ever came down.
Right, she's been gone for quite a while now. I don't even... Has she even been on Raw since the draft? I can't even remember now.
Once, I believe, at the very beginning, but I could be completely wrong about that.
Well, I know that the medical staff was checking out a number of people this past Monday, as Luke Harper reportedly got cleared. So it's very likely that they were checking her out, and last word is that she did not receive clearance to return back to the ring. However, I do think that that's coming soon, so now...
Before we move, you don't see the company holding any ill will because of the Alberto Del Rio situation and her?
I don't, because I think that if they wanted to get rid of her, they had every opportunity to do so, and I don't think that they would keep her just to, in a sense, bury her, where they know that she's not afraid to just leave. She made that very clear by... The rumor was that she tried to quit. Some people tried to deny that, which it later came out that she did try to quit, which is why she hired some legal representation, because she's still under contract till 2019. So I think she still plays a big part in the future of the company, and as long as she can stay out of trouble and keep her gorgeous little immature self out of making silly decisions, then I think that everything will be water under the bridge at this point.
Yeah, and the thing we have to remember with Paige is that she's very young. Because Dana covers Total Divas, I happen to get to watch that. What am I saying? I watch it because I like it.
Yeah, I can't lie. Why you always
I can't lie. She's incredibly immature. She's incredibly impulsive, but she's incredibly talented, and that all comes with being a young phenom, essentially.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. I think probably growing up in the business and wrestling since she was 13, she's always, it was obviously on a much smaller scale, but I think she's got a bit of the child star syndrome, so that's to be expected with her, but I do think that there are still big things in store for her as long as she can keep herself together, so to speak.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. They had every opportunity to get rid of her, and if it was going to happen, they would have done it.
I mean, reportedly they had decided to fire her before the suspension, and then changed their minds, so, take that for what it's worth. So, we are going to wrap things up now with the main event of the evening for the WWE Universal Championship. We have the champion, Kevin Owens, defending against Seth Rollins. Now, for those that know me and talk to me on the regular, or possibly have seen this in my column, I am a big Kevin Owens supporter, and in my opinion, he is the best guy in the entire industry right now. So, I don't know, what do you think about Kevin Owens? Would you agree with that or disagree with that? I know a lot of people, and with good reason, would give the argument that Seth Rollins is the best in the industry right now.
I had no idea who Kevin Owens even was until one day when I came into work, and you were like, "Oh, they signed the best heel ever. Wait till you see this guy. He's great." And I didn't know who you were talking about.
Oh,
and then he debuted against Sammy. And I was when you said a monster heel and the best you've ever seen, you weren't lying. I think he is the best that I've seen. In-ring talent, I think Rollins is better, personally. He's more athletic, and I'm not talking about just looks. I just think Rollins has more of a moveset, and I think he's a little more fluid. Not discounting Owens, because I think Owens is great. I don't think he's bad in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
But if I was gonna pick a more talented in-ring technician, I'd pick Rollins. If I was to pick a more entertaining superstar, Kevin Owens all the way.
Right. I think I hadn't seen too much of his work prior to WWE, but I had seen enough of it that I knew that if he got the opportunity, he was going to be a big deal. Because the personality in him that comes out in the ring is unmatched. I know Rollins is certainly a better athlete. I mean, there's probably not anybody in the company except for maybe Neville who's as good of an athlete as Seth Rollins is, possibly on the planet. But in terms of the entertainment value, like you said, and promo work, I think Owens has Rollins beat by leaps and bounds. And we have not still seen the entire offense from Kevin Owens, which almost makes me want to tell you, just wait, Josh. Just wait until you see what else this guy can do. Because a lot of the stuff I feel like they don't allow him to really do. I know his debut match against CJ Parker, he pulled off a somersault plancha within like the first minute of the match, and it blew the roof off the NXT arena. And I can't think of a time where we've seen him do that since.
Ever since Brock Lesnar about broke his neck trying to do a moonsault, they're a little hesitant letting larger athletes do those kind of moves.
This is true, yeah.
But Owen, you know who Owens reminds me of? Is Vader. Not Vader, excuse me. Bam Bam Bigelow. I misspoke. Because you see Bam Bam, a guy of his size, was able to pull off the aerial moves that he could and move like he did in the ring. You just don't expect that from somebody of that girth and that build. Yeah,
Bam Bam is, in my book, is a Hall of Famer. I'm not certain why he's not in there. It could be because of his early passing, but you won't get any argument from me about Bam Bam. Easily one of, if not the best big man worker of all time. I definitely see the comparisons in terms of the high flying ability between Owens and Bam Bam. Bam Bam was a little bit bigger. However, I think Owens is actually more athletic, because Bam Bam's moonsault was more of like it was almost like a cartwheel kind of, because he couldn't quite get all of that over. Not like
yeah, it wasn't a full 90-degree flip. Yeah.
Yeah, I would compare Owens more to a Hugh Morris, actually. I think that would be, to me, more of a closer comparison. Or Bill DeMott, if you remember him better on game.
Yeah, that's what I recognize both names, but yeah.
So, in terms of the prediction, I think I might as well just start off, because I think you know where I'm going with this. I'm going Kevin Owens all the way. I feel like we might see Triple H get back involved in this, because it's a little odd to me that he just showed up out of nowhere to help Owens win the title, and we haven't heard a peep from him since. So I kind of feel like that's going to happen, but if I'm betting the house, I'm betting it on Kevin Owens. This one, to me, is probably the biggest no-brainer of the night, except for Nia Jax and Alicia Fox.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. Kevin Owens is going to take this for the reasons you stated. Triple H coming back, and we haven't seen him since SummerSlam, so it makes sense. And my prediction is that they're doing a slow burn to an eventual Seth Rollins versus Triple H at WrestleMania next year.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Where Triple H is going to cost Rollins numerous title attempts and the title itself, forcing these once great allies to have to clash.
Yeah, the other thing I could see happening is where I still think they're going to do the triple threat match for Hell in a Cell, is we possibly see Jericho get involved, but I definitely see Rollins getting screwed over in some way, because they're obviously looking to build him as a babyface now. I'm hoping that they don't go the quote-unquote cookie cutter route with him, and they just kind of leave him as a tweener. I think he's a lot better off towing the line between heel and face, similar to a Dean Ambrose, so where I would call Roman Reigns more of a cookie cutter, to say.
Yeah, Roman would definitely be your prototypical superhero in that scenario. Rollins does a great job of walking that line, because you want to root for him because he's such a great athlete and he's so good on the mic, but you want to hate him because he's such a smarmy little turd.
Exactly.
Which is a credit to him that he's able to pull that off, because only your top caliber superstars can pull off the tweener image 100% and make it work.
Yep, I think that the fans have been waiting to cheer for him, and if he would have came back as a full-fledged babyface after his injury when he returned at Extreme Rules, then he would be a lot further ahead in the progression of heel to babyface at this point. But, where obviously I think everything kind of worked out the way that it was supposed to, or should anyway. Not supposed to, because obviously Finn Balor got hurt, and that wasn't supposed to happen. But yeah, I definitely think Kevin Owens wins it, and we will see Rollins probably in the title picture, at least through Hell in a Cell. But I agree that for WrestleMania next year, I'd be willing to put money on Triple H versus Rollins, because that was what was supposed to happen this past WrestleMania, but Rollins got hurt, so it didn't happen.
Yeah, and that's where I got that from, is that where it was supposed to happen this past April. This will end in one of two ways. Either Triple H will get involved, cost Rollins the victory, and Owens will take it, or Owens is going to win clean, Jericho, like you said, is going to come out and celebrate with him, and I see a clean breaker happening.
All right, we're going to wrap things up here with Joshua Searles. So I know you have another edition of Mixed Tag Mayhem, your column, coming out next Tuesday. So what can we look forward to with that coming up here?
Well, Christina and I are going to be discussing Bray Wyatt and his face of fear, quote-unquote, gimmick. But realistically, you need more than 5 wins in a calendar year to be even close to being to be feared. So we're going to be discussing Bray and his fall from grace, essentially, and what they can do to build him back up and, give him the push that he really deserves, because I think Bray Wyatt's gimmick is the absolute best in the industry today.
Yeah, I'm also a big Bray Wyatt fan, so I would probably agree with a lot of the sentiment that we'll be reading up in that column, so I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Well, and with Bray, you got to remember, if you remember the Nexus, and when he came out as Husky Harris, you saw the in-ring potential. And to see what he's done with this character, I love Bray Wyatt, and it really disappoints me to see what's happened to him.
Yeah, I'm ready for him to get a push, so definitely everybody, you want to be on the lookout for Josh's column with Christina Marston coming out on Tuesday. That is the Mixed Tag Mayhem column. Of course, you can catch Josh every Friday evening doing the play-by-play for WWE Superstars, where you'll be able to read a little bit about some of the stars that we don't get to see on Raw too often. And with that being
Poor
said,
Ascension.
yeah, exactly. People along that ilk. So with that being said, you can follow Mr. Joshua Searles on Twitter at SwirlyJ22. That's at SWIRLYJ22. And of course, check out his column Mixed Tag Mayhem every other Tuesday. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it, Josh. I want to...
Awesome, Eric. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me. Sorry, I started a few times, everybody, but this is my first one. I hope you enjoyed it. And go Patriots.
Nah, you did fine, man. You just earned about 1,000 hateful tweets with the Go Patriots, though.
Hey, they hate us because they ain't us.
They hate us because they ain't us.
Have a great night, Eric.
Until next time, I'm sure we'll have you on the show again, and thanks for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was the Clash of Champions preview with TopRopeReport.com's Joshua Searles. Great job by Josh there. We'll definitely be looking to have him on the show again in the future. Of course, this Sunday, Clash of Champions begins at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the WWE Network. Kickoff show beginning at 7. If for whatever reason you are unable to watch, if you gotta work that night, and would like to find out what's going on before watching the show possibly the next day, be sure to get on TopRopeReport.com, where we give you the most detailed live play-by-play of all the great big events like the pay-per-views, Raw, SmackDown Live, NXT. We did the Cruiserweight Classic. Joshua covers Superstars for us every Friday evening, so definitely make sure you check that out. You'll definitely want to keep an eye out for his next column coming out on Tuesday, Mixed Tag Mayhem, with Christina Marston, where he will discuss the career path of the Eater of Worlds, one of my favorites, Bray Wyatt, and what kind of changes can be done with Bray, how he should be booked moving forward. So be on the lookout for that coming on Tuesday. As always, I would like to urge everybody to keep reading TopRopeReport.com. If you want the most reliable news from the most reliable sources anywhere on the web, you'll hashtag GetOnTop with TRR. Check out all of our great columns by myself. We've got columns by the rest of the TRR staff. Also, like I said, our live results. We also have superstar bios. And if you are looking for some sweet merch that's wrestling related, but it's not WWE owned, then you'll definitely want to check out the TRR shop. We've got excellent gear on there, such as drink koozies, wristbands. We've got package deals, t-shirts, of course. We've got one of our more popular items right now is the TRR Club shirt, which you will notice looks strikingly similar to a Bullet Club shirt, but it's not a Bullet Club shirt. It's a TRR Club shirt. So you can get any of that great gear on the Top Rope Report shop. Definitely want to check that out. As always, you can follow TopRopeReport.com on Twitter at TRR Wrestling. You can like us on Facebook at TopRopeReport.com. Follow us on Instagram at TopRopeReport.com. If you'd like to follow yours truly on Twitter, my handle is at TRR_EAmes. That's EAMES. And you can also follow Josh, like we said, at SwirlyJ22, SWIRLYJ22. Until next time, Top Ropers, be on the lookout for more great news on TopRopeReport.com. And as always, just remember, it's not how hard you get knocked down, it's whether or not you can kick out.